or like a Family Guy cutaway of like, oh, we're gonna have to up the DNA of the tuna. We're gonna have to get more screams out of the one tuna we've got. And you see like a tuna like tied down, like, ah, no, and they're like torturing it, and it screams a little louder, and then it's like, ooh, that's great. We've passed the test. I'd like to imagine there's one tuna being tortured like Monsters Inc., screaming, and that Subway sandwiches are just tuna screams.
I think that's a great system. I think it's up to you what you think is actually going on in those factories. I don't know what to believe. The idea that it being cooked would stop it from registering as tuna DNA. As a amateur geneticist myself, that seems weird. But I will say I am a little bit biased. Maybe not as biased as Subway, but I do like their tuna sandwich. I don't know if it's tuna. I wouldn't bet much money that it's fish. But that said, it's kind of tasty.
Yeah, you're trash, obviously. You are trash and you like trash things. And it comes along with your, slavery Doritos, so that's good. Look, there is something called pink slime out there. I think you guys know what I'm talking about. It's basically the filler that holds the other crap that's supposed to be meat or chicken or whatever the hell else in fast food. I'm pretty sure that there's some pink. It's mostly pink slime. I mean, that's what I want to know. I need to know if not tuna. What is it? If it's bereft of tuna, what is it refed with?
Well, you need to be careful, okay? Because while again, we like fact checks, there are some truths that are too risky, too dangerous to look into. Yeah. Read the collected works of H.P. Lovecraft, but it might not be tuna. What is it? I don't know. Remember the story when I'm sure they have a website about this, but they said that the bread had some of the same material as yoga mats. How deep do you want to dig into any of this?
Oh my God, you guys, Subway is nar. It's the only, yes, it's the healthiest option when you're driving up the 5 in California. I get that. But it is disgusting. It is no good. Like for me, I don't eat meat, so I mostly just put like, it basically tastes like mayo and mustard smushed between yoga mats. And I'm like, I guess it'll do. That's all I eat from there. Yeah. And like a couple, like what's in the cheese? Who knows if that's actually cheese?
Maybe it's tuna. I don't know. There's like a 50% chance that later today I will eat a tuna sandwich. But anyway, yeah, I would just don't look too deep into this. Someone suggested a brand. I can't believe it's not tuna. I don't know. I don't think anyone is going there really thinking that it's genetically pure in some way, but I don't know. I mean, their tagline is eat fresh. They never said eat tuna. They never made very specific claims about the animal, just the freshness of it.
Mark my words, in 6 months, they'll be like, ooh, impossible tuna. See, if you're a vegetarian or vegan, you can eat impossible tuna. And we'll be like, wait a minute.
Oh God.
Just need a good rebrand.
That is gonna have to be our last thought, unfortunately. We're out of time, but Francesca, as always, thank you for joining me. Everyone check out the Bitchuation Room. She's putting hard work in there. And don't go anywhere because we've got Indisputable coming up. YouTube.com/indisputable_TYT. Rashad Ritchie will be up with all the news right after this. And until I see you next, stay safe out there. Stay sane out there. I'll see you soon.
Yep, you know what it is. It's indisputable. I'm your host, Rashad Richard. Good to be with you again today. We have a packed show. You don't want to miss my I Wish a Karen Would. This segment, male Karens unite. That's all I have to say. Ladies and gentlemen, breaking down news of the day with me will be none other than our dear sister, Kenya Evelyn, editor for Insider's Voices of Color, will be with me in the bullpen, my debate segment. You don't want to miss it. Kurt Schlichter, senior columnist for townhall.com, retired colonel. We're going to talk about guns, the Constitution, policing in America. Stick and stay for that. Ladies and gentlemen, my top news story. Amazon, yep, Amazon. Amazon sells white privilege cards and a bombing suspect had one. I kid you not. Do you remember the guy in Napa, California who was arrested right after the inauguration? He had pipe bombs, he had a bunch of weapons, and he was planning to bomb the Democratic headquarters. That's what he wanted to do. Well, this guy literally had a white privilege card that you could purchase on Amazon. And I know some of you are saying, the hell you say? Well, this is what I'm saying. Do you see it? That is your white privilege card. It says white privilege trumps everything, inspirational card gift. That's what it is, according to Amazon. So Amazon is selling white privilege cards. The guy who was going to conspired to commit an act of domestic terrorism, he has these cards. About the item. Now, on Amazon, you can go there right now. It's still there. They have not pulled it. On Amazon, it says about this item. And here's what it reads. White privilege cards trumps everything. This card grants its bearer happiness and success because it's the color of yours and not the choices you make that determine your abilities to be successful. That's at Amazon.com. It also explains this gifting item in more detail. It says PVC material, this cute engraved wallet inserts card is made with high quality PVC, which is sturdy and lightweight. Permanent engraving cards won't change color or tarnish, will not easy bend. That's verbatim, I'm reading it verbatim, okay? So it sounds a little off, it is what it is. Who's the guy? He's the guy. Let's show a picture of him. That's him. 45-year-old Ian Benjamin Rogers of Napa and 37-year-old Gerard Copeland, are in some hot water over their Trump-fueled rage following the 2020 election. Both now face charges of conspiracy to destroy by fire or explosive a building used in interstate commerce, and the feds have evidence suggesting a plot to blow up the John L. Burton Democratic headquarters in Sacramento. But it doesn't stop there because see, typically these guys, they do not operate just independent of each other. They operate in groups, they operate as a system, and it's not just one bomb or one weapon, they have a lot. So Rogers also faces additional weapons violations, including 1 count of possession of unregistered destructive devices and 3 counts of possession of machine guns. Rogers was arrested and his home and business were raided on January 15. And federal investigators say he was found in possession of 5, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 homemade pipe bombs, a cache of over 50 firearms, including illegal assault rifles and automatic weapons, 15,000 rounds of ammunition, and several pounds of gunpowder. Put his picture back up. This guy, this one guy has all of this artillery as if he's going to war with the government. Oh, he was planning to go to war with the government, with democracy. That is what he was attacking. So naturally, he needs a whole lot of ammunition to do this. Now, let me show you how fragile democracy is and the problem of handling individuals like this without a heavy hand. You gotta be heavy-handed with these domestic terrorists. The raid on Rogers' home and business began with a tip to the Napa County Sheriff about some illegal weapons. God knows what would have happened if whoever that was did not tip off the county sheriff. The only reason why the FBI was able to stop this planned assault was because somebody who remains anonymous today tipped off local authorities. To talk more about this, I got Kenya Evelyn. Sister, what's your take on this?
It just speaks to oftentimes the disconnect between federal and local and state law enforcement, that oftentimes it just takes too much. It takes one lone tip. It takes even what we saw a couple weeks ago in Denver, where we saw a hotel employee alerting authorities to what were a stash of guns and weapons in a hotel room. What we're seeing is that there's just generally a disconnect in being able to track and trace many of these white supremacists, many of these domestic terrorists that we have known for quite some time have been a threat and the largest threat to this nation. So it's quite disappointing to see that. I mean, it took essentially a lone anonymous tip that could have potentially saved lives here. And we need to get some type of formulated system between our federal and some type of cooperation between our federal, state, and local agencies, so that we are actually tracking not just those who enter law enforcement. We know that those are an issue. We know that the FBI has known about white supremacy in law enforcement for quite some time. We need to see what systematic ways can we track and what can we track and then even hold accountable those who are trying to acquire and stockpile weapons to actually act on their philosophies.
Yeah, and think about the insanity of this entire ordeal. Obviously, the white privilege card has been working quite well for him, because how in the hell do you get to a point where you have over 50 firearms, including illegal assault rifles, illegal automatic weapons, and you have 15,000 rounds of ammunition to coincide with your illegal weaponry, and nobody has caught you? Meaning you have transacted commerce, you have connected to illegal sales, you have been living your worst life, and nobody tipped off anyone. Nobody caught you in some kind of sting operation. Nobody had you on their radar. Nobody looked at you as a domestic terroristic threat. You were operating in significant privilege with your white privilege card from Amazon for a number of years, obviously, and then somebody tipped off the county sheriff. What if the county sheriff would have been one of these guys who said, not really an issue, not a big deal. He has the right to bear arms, not going to look into it. Something that simple could have stopped from uncovering this entire domestic terrorism plot.
Similarly, the way we know that just as easily a white or brown or non-black neighbor can be the source of black people encountering police at disproportionate rates, when we know that some of the easiest ways to target communities of color is to use police and calling the police, weaponizing our ability to call 911. When you look and juxtapose this scenario and think, had this been anybody else, had anyone, possibly what we know of is what we do not know is that there were red flags, that there were opportunities, that there were potential times to raise this very issue. But if this was a person of color, what we have seen the same lackadaisical response, what we have seen the same lethargy in relation to how communities of color, the Second Amendment rights don't apply equally to us. The whole reason why we have certain gun restrictions is because of the fear of black people arming themselves. So if this was juxtaposed in a community of color, if this was a person of color, if this was something as easily traceable, like you said, this is commerce. This is across states. This is something that becomes federal then. If we're looking at that, why is it that it took so long for someone who ordinarily, if you're trying to even purchase a gun, you should have some type of, even at the state or local level, some type of background check or some type of just registration. If we're seeing that this is disproportionately barring people of color from being able to legally carry weapons, why is that same privilege we see time and time again being exercised among those who have nefarious intentions or just outright domestic terrorist intentions?
Yeah, see, this person is a thug. You see, this is your thug right here. And a black male would have never been in this situation because he would not have been able to get up to over 50 illegal firearms or 15,000 rounds of ammunition. Somebody would have been called the police on him if he was a black male, or let's say he had a particular religious background. Somebody would have absolutely stopped his illegal purchasing of firearms and artillery. But once again, it shows the variation of the narrative when you change something about an individual and put them in the same context, put them in the same story. This would not have worked out the same way for a black male. This would not have worked out the same way for a brown male, period. And everybody knows it.
Absolutely, I wholeheartedly agree with you. And in fact, what we're seeing even is that around the country, as we're having these very same conversations about gun control, as we're having these very same questions about holding institutions accountable, we're seeing that this not being applied equally. We're seeing that the same way that when we're encouraging black communities to arm themselves is suddenly when we have those same the same pundits, the same conservative pundits who are terrified, who are ordinarily advocating for our right to bear arms, are standing by and almost and basing their entire platforms on the Second Amendment. When you see that then being applied to legally black and brown people carrying guns, being stopped by police, when we're automatically assuming that they are doing so illegally, we're recognizing that it doesn't apply equally. This isn't a gun rights issue, it's a privilege, this is a terrorism issue.
Yeah. All right, let me shift gears to something that made my whole weekend. Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene, they were humiliated by a comedian. His name is Walter Masterson, who actually worked a little bit for TYT, doing some pro-Trump interviews, I think. You can find all of that on YouTube, but I wanna go directly to this video.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I mean, everyone thinks you're crazy. I don't think you're crazy. People think you're a pedophile. I don't think you're a pedophile at all. I don't think he's a pedophile at all. The charges against him are totally false. They're totally false. Oh my God.
Thank
you. Made my whole damn weekend. Okay, first of all, this comedian obviously was very strategic. He disarmed all of their security by just simply wearing an outfit that resembled the American flag. That's all you have to do. I don't even think Marjorie Taylor Greene knew what was going on even after the guy was removed, because she's still there with a thumbs up. The look on Matt Gaetz's face, priceless, when he realized that this guy was clowning all of them. But see, this is connected to a string of cancellations. These individuals are on a tour across America called the America First Tour. Matt Gaetz is under investigation for trafficking at least one underage woman, maybe more, or one underage girl at the time, maybe more, we don't know. But he's under investigation with the federal government. So venues are starting to cancel. An American First rally with Representative Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene was rejected by a third California venue Saturday, just hours before it was set to start, okay? So there's a cancellation. The city of Anaheim gave the event the axe because of public safety concerns, according to a statement posted on Twitter by city spokesman Mike Leister. And there you have the statement, and they basically say, hey, here's why we're doing it. They have some concerns about public safety. Okay, really interesting stuff. So in a last-ditch effort to still have an event, Gaetz tweeted a video of himself, Riverside, outside of Riverside City Hall, calling on supporters to protest communism. Okay, that's their go-to. Let's go to a video.
Congressman Matt Gaetz here at Riverside City Hall, and I am inviting all of my fellow patriots to join me and Marjorie Taylor Greene here tonight. We're having a peaceful protest against communism. These folks, they try to cancel our venues, but they can never cancel our patriotism or our American spirit.
Okay, they say they canceled it for safety concerns. They canceled it because, dude, you're not that guy anymore, period. Even with Republicans who once invited you to their arenas, to their organization, to their venue, they are now canceling you. Why are you not saying that they are part of the cancel culture, Congressman Gaetz? Why are you not calling them out for literally canceling you? Are they not part of the cancel culture because they are canceling you and Marjorie Taylor Greene? Okay. This rally event had been canceled at 2 other social venues already. Managers of the Pacific Hills Banquet and Event Center Laguna Hills and Orange County dropped the rally a week ago once they learned of the nature of the event. It just gets worse. But these are two, at this point, these individuals are clowns. Let's go to the next video.
The radical left and the woke mob is trying to cancel our rally, but we're not going to let it happen. So here's the message for you, communist Democrats. We are going to stand up and we will have our America First rally tomorrow. You can't cancel us. You can't stop us. We're going to save America.
So Congressman Tweedledee and Congresswoman Tweedledum have now indicated that they are going to sue the city of Riverside over the cancellation. That's what they're going to do. They're going to sue them now over the cancellation. Kenya, this is just a clown show and a half, right?
You mentioned that Marjorie Taylor Greene essentially kept her thumbs up the entire time and didn't seem to know what was going on. I would counter that seems to be Marjorie Taylor Greene just about any given time. But in reality, what we're seeing is just we're seeing the last straws of two individuals who are slowly being boxed out outside of their own party as well outside of Congress. They're laughing stocks, and what we know essentially is that the Republican Party knows it's a matter of time before both of them become dangerous or toxic to be associated with. And what we're seeing is venues are as well. Institutions and voters are holding them accountable for anyone who is choosing to house or support their agenda. And the same time that we're seeing them levy insults like communism or socialism, we're also seeing challenges directly to them to define it. And that's often what it is. It's the big, scary, big words that bother so many of these communities that they don't even necessarily know. Similarly to critical race theory, what we're seeing is it gives people a source to be angry. It gives people this opportunity to feel victimized, and that's their base. That's what they're appealing to. They're appealing to people who feel as though their entire livelihoods are under threat on account of losing an election that was stolen from them. We know that that is not the case, but we know that this is the platform that folks like Gaetz, folks like Taylor Greene, this is what helps them thrive. This is what helps them keep getting donations. This is what keeps them in the conversation of being even a formidable candidate or formidable member of Congress, when otherwise what we saw that Marjorie Taylor Greene has been stripped of her roles in Congress, and we're seeing soon at any point in time we can hear of charges filed against Matt Gaetz. So what we're seeing is that essentially these folks are just grasping at straws, and it's becoming more desperate, and we're seeing that play out right now.
Yeah, Matt Gaetz is going to the pokey. Now that's for sure. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And it is quite interesting that we have devolved to a place in American politics where you have no shame campaigning with a man who is under investigation for trafficking underage girls. The allegations, the other allegations are damning too. The allegation of pay for play, the allegation of cocaine use and using prostitutes. But you're on a tour with this individual because you have no shame. Now notice, Kenya, they never talk policy. They never talk policy. They only talk in tired ass Sean Hannity talking points. They never talk policy. They name call. They say things like communist Democrats. Now let's rally. Can you come to this event that I'm doing outside of this storefront property because we got canceled at this other event? So they're definitely not feeling the love inside of the party, and Donald Trump is providing absolutely no cover for Matt Gaetz. Now, when you have gone so far off the deep end that Trump is unwilling to back you, even though you have kissed his rear end Trump's entire political career, you've kissed his rear end, and he's not willing to give you some protection, you're too far. You're going too far. All right, we got more on the other side. Stick and stay is indisputable.
So a lot of progressive office holders are doing something fun. I like fun. They're doing the last 2 years in 2 minutes. Okay, we're gonna try it here. First, I wanna let you guys know about the years before that. Hey, remember we started the Just Democrats here on the Young Turks. It was officially launched on our air, basically by you guys. And then we featured AOC, we featured Cori Bush, and Ro Khanna became the first ever Just Democrat incumbent, all on the Young Turks. Now, the last 2 years have been a spectacular follow-up to that. So let's put the 2 minutes on the clock and do this. Young Turks got to start back in 2002, and I think we've been an important part of the progressive movement ever since. What we mainly do is amplify the progressive voice and candidates out there, and I think we've done a pretty good job. Right now, we're currently #1 most engaged news politics network online, beating CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC, all of them. We're #1 in total minutes watched. That means not only the number of people watching, but how long they watch. We just crossed 20 million followers and 500 million monthly views. Now, why? That's because actually the country's progressive. It's 2/3 progressive, and you guys have allowed us to be your voice, and we're incredibly thankful for that. So what did we do with that voice? Well, let's look at 2019. We went all over the country talking to you guys and the candidates. So we were in Miami, we were in Detroit, we were in Houston, and we were in Iowa. In fact, we were all over Iowa. You guys were all over Iowa, and all of the candidates saw you guys. We had wonderful people speaking, like the one and only Nina Turner at our rallies. Bernie Sanders stopped by, Andrew Yang, Elizabeth Warren. We interviewed almost everyone on the campaign trail, with the exception of Biden and Buttigieg. And we held them accountable. We even did a progressive economic pledge, and so many wonderful people signed on to that. Bernie Sanders, Warren, Marianne Williamson, AOC, the entire squad, Justice Democrats, and so many others. Now, on top of all that, we started a show called The Conversation, where we featured so many progressive thinkers, writers, and candidates. And one of the candidates we featured in 2019 was Jamal Bowman. Here comes Jamal Bowman. Then we had an amazing 2020. We hired a climate reporter. Damage Report passed 500,000 subscribers. Young Turks passed 5 million subscribers. We're getting the message out to more and more people. Bernie Sanders comes on in the heat of the primary. He comes on after the election to say what we're gonna do for the future. And then Marie Newman wins. Jamal Bowman wins. Cori Bush wins. And then just when you thought it couldn't get any better, here comes Nina Turner. Hello, somebody. And she's running for Congress, and she comes on the Young Turks first. On election week, we had nearly 2 million hours of viewing. We're #1 destination for progressives. You made all that happen. This is amazing, and thank you for those 2 years. What, I went past 2 minutes? Of course!
Viewers had asked for an interview with the TYT Lizard. Mr. Lizard. Oh, you changed colors today. Nice. I don't even know how you feel about us. Do you even like us?
Well, you guys made me this awesome house, so I'm kind of in your debt. I was found outside on the street, and you gave me a home. Granted, it was a really crappy home for a while, but then through the power of fundraising, I became a person who has a multi-level Trump-style mansion.
You do. By the way, you never looked better, man. Normally, you're just green or just brown, but today you're in mid-lizard, right?
I'm not very smart. I'm a lizard, so I don't know how the science works. I guess this is just my mood. It's not every day that thresholds like this are broken. I'm just so excited. I can't contain my pigmentation.
And now you're showing it off.
Yep.
Yeah, I've never seen the lizard like this before.
Welcome back to Indisputable. Let me read some of these viewer comments. Don't forget, if you're watching me on the TDR page, make sure you subscribe. Jump over to Indisputable TYT, subscribe to that page. We're at over 140,000 subscribers on that page because of you. I thank you for that from the bottom of my heart. Also follow us on social media, Indisputable TYT. That's good for Instagram, that's good for Twitter. All right, let me get to these comments. TYT member Bo Dragon says, these Neanderthals should be sent back to the past in his DeLorean. Wait a minute, that was a DeLorean. The flux capacitor. All right. LMG15 says, nice tie, Dr. Richie. Thank you for that compliment. Craig Souffle says, made my weekend too, Dr. Richie. I love the fact as soon as the flag guy mentioned Gaetz being a pedophile, his butthead, stupid smile immediately went away. Loved it. And listen, I blame Matt Gaetz. He knows what he's under investigation for. He put himself in these situations, okay? Super chat, YouTube. Made money in the building. I saw a video yesterday where Greene and Gaetz got booed back into their cars. Don't come to Cali with that BS. We don't play out here. Obviously not. Salon Sahar, I think. Thank you for that. Nail C says, yeah, sounds super ironic, but the alt-right ain't got no sense of irony. Yeah. Agreed. Dragon Slayer Dragon, I'm surprised they didn't make the letters white too. Well, that wouldn't work. You see, then the background would have to be black, and you know how that'll go. It's a white card, white privilege card. Brianna C says, the white card won't change color. That's what the description says on Amazon. You're right. Charlie Freeman says, damn, he embarrassed the hell out of Matt Gaetz. Priceless. It was priceless. Twitch, Big Butter 7724 says, looking sharp, doctor. Thank you so much. About Matt Gaetz again and Marjorie Taylor Greene. Susan says, I had that playing on the loop. Susan also says, I heart TYT so much. And we heart you back. Ladies and gentlemen, I told you this would happen. I told you that all of this conversation and legislation against critical race theory had nothing to do with critical race theory. They wanted to stop the teaching of actual history in the United States of America. Now, the Senate in Texas, they have passed a bill to stop the teaching of civil rights. Yeah, that's what the Senate has done. Texas Senate bill passes to remove required lessons on civil rights movements from the public curriculum. Public schools in Texas are now one step closer to no longer being required to teach about various American civil rights movements in social studies classes. I told you this was the intent of all of this misdirection about critical race theory. Had nothing to do with an advanced theoretical framework formalized in the 1970s and was here well before that. Had nothing to do with it. It had everything to do with a false pretext of critical race theory to create a context to get rid of teaching true history in America. Now they're literally saying you cannot teach about Susan B. Anthony or Dr. King or any of them. You can't do it. Bloomberg reports that on Friday, the state Senate voted 18-4 to pass Senate Bill 3, which drops requirements for teachers to include lessons on Cesar Chavez, Susan B. Anthony, the history of Native Americans, the writings of Martin Luther King Jr. They got Dr. King in this foolishness and other figures. Let's put up some of the historical figures they would like us to erase from the memory of this country, people that stood up for others who were suffering. That's what this was about. This whole thing has been about getting them out of the curriculum. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, a Republican who presides over the Senate, said in a statement after the vote that Senate Bill 3 will make certain that critical race philosophies. What? Critical race philosophies? I've been a university professor for years. They've just made up something. So he's saying critical race philosophies, including the debunked 1619 founding myth, are removed from our school curriculum statewide. Once again, 1619, that project showed you how slaves, the enslaved, created the economic wealth and leverage that the United States currently still benefits from. That's what it did. It goes on to say, in fact, this bill on teacher curriculum is currently stalled in the Texas House of Representatives because House Democrats are in Washington, D.C. advocating on behalf of equitable voting rights. This is all in opposition to a voting bill that would place more restrictions on the state's already restrictive voting process. So look at how they're trying to hit you. Look at it now. This is a model that will be utilized across the United States of America. They don't want you picking the politician. They want politicians picking the voter. That's what they want to do. And so they're passing these extreme restriction policies so that they can pick who votes for them. And then they're going to pick people who count the votes. They're going to say, we want this particular person to count votes so that they can use the most restrictive policies possible to kick out votes. And they want to make sure that those who are coming up in K through 12 education do not learn the true history of this country, because those who are coming up, our young leadership class, those are the individuals who have an opportunity when they become of adult age, when they start getting into positions of authority, to overturn the madness that these bigoted individuals created history long in the United States of America. And so they want to stop that, put the right politicians in place for their side only, for their agenda only, and at the same time, de-educating, miseducating young children, lying to them about the historical past of this very messy country. It goes deeper. Governor Abbott previously called for a special session so lawmakers could vote on these two pieces of legislation. And unless the Democrats return to Texas before the session expires August 6th, it looks like the bills would just keep on being stalled. Thankfully, Democrats left Texas so that Texas General Assembly could not have a quorum because of the insanity of the voting restriction bill. And because of that, they're not able to conduct regular business. And that's the reason why this is likely to stall. But that's it. That's the only reason. Kenya, what are your thoughts?
I think it's fascinating what we're even seeing here. If you take it a step further and just look at it solely at the educational level, we're watching the browning and blackening of this country. We're watching a country become more and more diverse. And what happens when you empower? What happens when a community, what happens when a country becomes more diverse? You demand agency and being represented within the country you live, within the community you live. And so this is all a part of a program where we're seeing similarly what we saw in Arizona, similarly what we saw in California. This isn't new. Yes, there's a nice, cool term that even folks are misusing now, what critical race theory or critical race philosophies, whatever now they want to call it. But essentially what we're seeing here is this is an effort to dial back the inclusion of people who will essentially make up the majority of this country over time, including them in the very history and recognition of the value of this country, the work in creating this country. And so what we're seeing is the same way that Chicano education was challenged in California, the same way that we saw Latino history being completely erased in Arizona. When you disempower a generation of children who go without seeing themselves represented in their history books, without seeing themselves represented in media, without seeing themselves represented in government, many of us in our generations have already seen and have already experienced the manifestations of that, the consequences of never being seen and being erased, essentially having your history, your prominence, and even your current influence in this country erased. When you disempower those generations at the early level, you keep them in a position of subservience subservience. You keep them in that position of seeing as if their time, their existence, and their community in this country is on borrowed time, as if this country is never yours. That's the message it's sending across, and it's creating that generational impact, that generational messaging that many folks aren't paying attention to.
Very well said, very well said. I have to shift gears. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish a Karen would.
You want to call the police on them for having a barbecue on a Sunday.
I feel free! Back off! I'm going to tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life.
Hell hath no fury like balding white male Karens united because of their inconvenience. Let me take you to an Instagram video that has gone viral, showcasing male Karens yelling anti-Asian slurs at employees at a ramen restaurant. This is in Florida. Florida. And in Florida, there's footage of this incident taken out front of the Ramen Lab Eatery in Delray Beach. The employees were simply trying to close down the restaurant. It was time to go. These individuals were clearly drunk, sitting on their dining tables. They were outside eating pizza, okay? When the employee requested, and appropriately and nicely, for them to leave, here's what happened.
I asked you nicely to leave, that's about it. I asked you nicely to leave, dude.
China flu shoving up your ass.
Okay, well done.
Oh, you Taiwanese.
Done, sir. Thank you. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I'm over here. What are you gonna do?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Keep saying what you need to say, sir.
I don't care.
Keep saying what you need to say.
No,
Keep saying what you need to say.
Look at Whoa. You got the video. Whoa. Yeah. Go ahead. Whoa. Sissy. Time me this.
That's what I'm saying. I'm asking you nicely, bro. Asking you nicely. Okay.
No balls.
Go ahead.
You don't take me. You ain't no balls.
I asked you nicely.
I asked you nicely.
We're trying to close, bro. Honestly, there's benches around the corner. It's not that hard, honestly.
Bro, grab your slice, put it in the box. Let's go. Yeah. Oh look, no, I gotta take a video of this guy. He's taking a video of me. Oh, I know, but let's just go. Let's just.
I mean, the employee is just such a gentleman, so nice. These individuals are being such jerks, and they decide to go racist because that's what's in their hearts, obviously. You know what I like about this story? It was the restaurant that posted the story, that posted the video. The restaurant did, and they also released a statement. Let me read this statement in part. It says, "We have zero tolerance for violence. We are an honest, hardworking business. We stand against any type of racism, harassment, and discrimination. We pride ourselves in having a multicultural environment. Unfortunately, this situation was very heartbreaking, and it will not break our spirits." You can read that statement in its entirety. Kenya, what are your thoughts?
I'm never surprised by the entitlement of older white men, number one. And then two, I'm just curious whether we're calling him Karen or Chad or Mike or what are the many names that are out there. But this just speaks to the entitlement. I think it's very commendable, though, that we see that it's a very front-facing message of the restaurant without identifying possible employees or having to subject them to what can often be the backlash that comes online and then the vitriolic backlash that comes from that. Those who are at the center of this shouldn't be those who are targeted. And I think it's very noble and admirable at the restaurant of taking a step forward and making it a collective statement from them as a restaurant, as an institution, as an establishment. But I'm not surprised by the audacity of whiteness as well as the entitlement of whiteness.
Yeah. All right, I got to get to this story. Police. Okay, I got a break. I'm gonna try to get to it. We got more. It's indisputable. Stick and stay.
Every day, the Young Turks delivers 2 hours of solid, fact-based, timely news and progressive commentary on all the day's most important stories. We keep our viewers informed while also providing perspective and insight on the news we cover, so you understand not only what's happening, but also what's happening behind the scenes, the stories behind the stories. Gee, I wonder why we didn't get $15 minimum wage. Because they're all raising money from the guys who don't want to increase the minimum wage.
And we play musical chairs and put these children in one awful detention facility to the next. That's what's happening at the border.
The things that got him banned, he's still spreading. So presumably, I think it's reasonable to say that if you allow him back on the website, he's going to do it again.
Any legal voter that we deem not willing to vote for my side shouldn't vote because it'll replace me that's supposed to vote for my side. That's not how voting works. That's not how democracy works.
And while many people following today's political news can get discouraged about the direction of the nation and the world, that's not us. At TYT, we're genuinely optimistic about the future, and with good reason. Today, wide majorities of Americans agree with our progressive stances on issues ranging from healthcare and education to climate, immigration, and wages. The rising generation of young people are also overwhelmingly progressive in their political beliefs and policy objectives, and they're increasingly flexing their muscle as voters and activists to demand change from our elected officials. The traditional mainstream media is mostly AWOL. They, along with the government and many other cherished institutions, have been captured by corporate interests. Audiences sense that they're not getting the whole story or even the truth from once trusted outlets, whether broadcast and cable TV news networks or national newspapers and magazines. The Republicans say we will serve our corporate masters at all costs, including killing democracy, yet here we are. Where else do you hear that? You hear that on NBC, on ABC, on CBS? You hear it nowhere.
They don't want to talk about money in politics because it's really hard to pass judgment when your media organization is funded by fossil fuel companies.
The antidote is the Young Turks. Unlike mainstream corporate outlets, we're not beholden to corporate advertisers, the defense contractors, to Wall Street, or to Big Pharma. And we don't carry water for the Republican or Democratic parties. So watch us Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, and join the thousands of progressives around the globe who tune in every day for TYT's unmatched, award-winning content and see what it's like to experience a news organization that only answers to you.
I'll continue to sit. I'm going to continue to stand with the people that are being oppressed.
The president labeled him a son of a bitch.
I don't think it's good to be a distraction to your team.
To stand proudly for the national anthem.
You know, some of these people need to move to another country.
Well, you shouldn't be playing, you shouldn't be there. Maybe you shouldn't be in the country.
The president is put in place to amplify the racists in this country.
Black men and boys are killed at an exponentially higher rate than white men and boys, as outlined by PBS. Black people are most likely to be killed by police, found mappingpoliceviolence.org. Personally, my biggest gripe is not seeing how sports and politics have been attached at the hip. From the jockey syndrome, to the Negro Leagues, to Tommy Smith and John Carlos, Muhammad Ali, to modern day and everything in between. This is not an escape. It is a reflection of reality and a reflection of the times.
Everything that we've accomplished over the years is because of our members who've allowed us to remain independent of corporate interests and reach 20 million followers. Now is the time to bring as many people into the progressive movement as possible. We're inviting you to be the change and help bring a community-powered progressive change machine to life. Details are at tyt.com/change. If you're a member, thank you. We need you to remain so. If you're one of the thousands of viewers out there who's not a member yet, the time has come for you to join now. We need you more than ever. tyt.com/change.
All right, welcome back to Indisputable. I'm going to read as many comments as I can, and then we'll get back into our stories. TYT member Mickey C, the silver-haired dragon, says they're not trying to erase philosophy. They're trying to erase history and recent history. Some of us were alive, active, and aware of the civil rights protests and acts of the mid-60s. So we're not talking about ancient history. That's correct. YouTube super chat, Elizabeth Jacob says, so tell me this, what are these folks going to do with Martin Luther King Jr. Day or Black Heritage Month? Sweep them under the rug as well? I'm just so done with their stupidity and ignorance. That's the spirit. Sears some, why do I try? Sears some contrite 74, maybe? With the easy access of information we have now, I don't know how they could think they can hide it. They must think it's still 1960 when it was hard to find. Well, they're living in a mental paradigm of 1960 for sure. Roger Harris says, Lady Kenya with the truth serum. That's my sister doing it. Lisa Cohen, what is going to happen when these kids go to college and they have no idea what the professors are talking about? Exactly, yeah. Let me get a few more in. Twitch, more books please, says as a history teacher of 10 years, I wouldn't comply. This is ridiculous. And listen, to every educator, literally, you are going to have to do that to save K through 12 education. Many teachers unions, they have come out and said, we will start defending if the state decides to prosecute you for teaching true history. Let me take you to my next story. The police decided to manipulate a photo of a black man in order to make him look like a suspect. A Portland judge decided to grant a man's release after the police altered his booking photo by removing his tattoos to more closely resemble a bank robbing suspect. Let me show you the pictures. Okay, one picture is the actual real picture, the one with tattoos, Tyrone Lamont Allen, okay? The other one is what the police did in order to make him look like a bank robbery suspect. Here's what they wanted him, who they wanted him to look like. Here it is. Here's the picture. The local news reported on this. The police department talked about it, said that there was a reward offered. How did this happen? Well, the police used editing software to remove the tattoos from the picture of the suspect and presented his revised face to foretellers. At least 2 of them identified him as the bank robber. Prosecutors in Portland said Mr. Allen may have applied makeup before the robberies and that investigators simply mimicked the possible disguise. The judge said, hail to the no. No, you cannot manipulate the photo of a mugshot that you have previously had in order to look like somebody that is currently wanted. Just imagine the precedent there. They could literally buy a precedent. They could manipulate any photo to make it look like me, to make it look like you, to morph that image into what they choose to. Not only is this bad policing, this should be criminal. This should be against the law. Those cops who did this should have walked out of that damn courtroom with handcuffs for playing with somebody's life like this, okay? So it looks like I need a new law. We need a new law in America to regulate some stuff we didn't even know the police were doing. Another thing. And do you think this is the only time it's happened? Do you really think this is the only time it has ever been done? No, not at all. During the case, it was revealed that this was not the first time the photo altering had been used by police. Prosecutors in Oregon pointed to a California ruling in 2015 in which a judge allowed the introduction of a photo array in which police had used editing software to add hooded sweatshirts to 6 photos. Once again, trying to morph the imagery to look like a wanted suspect. But ultimately, the judge decided in favor of the defendant. Allen supporters looked on in stunned silence from the public gallery before the judge allowed the 52-year-old man to walk with no prison time. It's like hitting the lottery. You never see this happen with a black man and his kind of lengthy criminal history, said Michael Fesser, who grew up with Allen and has had his own well-known history with Oregon's justice system. For the past year, Allen has worked with Fesser's program called Going Home to help men after they get out of prison. Literally, you have people trying to get their lives together, working on behalf of the common good of formerly incarcerated men and women, working with disenfranchised communities in order to make sure they have a brighter future. And you got these damn police agencies doing garbage like this. It may not be a statutory violation of the law yet, it should be, but it's damn sure a violation of humanity, ethics, morality, and decent policing. Kenya, what are your thoughts?
And you hit it on the head. We have seen this before, inside, within law enforcement and even outside. We remember the notorious time cover of O.J. Simpson when they purposely darkened his skin to make him look more menacing, to make him look terrifying, because it serves a point. Because there's biases that we are perpetuating when we show certain images. The fact that for so many years, nightly news and local news stations were more likely to show the headshots, the mugshots of those under investigation, even for criminality without even being charged. And more oftentimes, those were of people of color. Those are perpetuating certain narratives and tropes that have put our communities in danger, that have allowed us to be stereotyped as more criminal or have a higher propensity for crime than other communities when that's simply not the case. So it's an intended message, not just in terms of jeopardizing the very lives of people who they are doing this to. We see this happening. I mean, this isn't something as simple as trying to do age progression of the missing. This is trying to create a narrative where there possibly isn't one. And that has, like you mentioned, legal consequences and legal implications. But beyond the legal side of it, it has societal impact. Oftentimes we talk about in journalism, folks will read the headline. Folks will read the misinformation. They hardly see the correction. So that message has already resonated. It has a potential to resonate, and it has a potential to make those very stereotypes that our communities fight against even harder to overcome. And what we're seeing here is that is exactly what's being perpetuated by law enforcement, and they're not unique to this.
Shifting gears to this next story. Imagine the best day of your life, the birth of your newborn, ends with 10 to 15 cops at your door with guns drawn for you. That's exactly what happened to a black couple. LAPD stormed a black couple's home hours after they refused a blood draw for their newborn. Does that not sound a bit heavy-handed? A black Los Angeles couple says officers stormed their homes alongside a social worker after they declined to let doctors perform a blood draw on their newborn daughter following a home birth. So this was a natural home birth. They did not want needles or blood drawn from their newborn. Here's the couple. Here's a picture of the couple. Kayla Love and Kari Jones, okay? Said circumstances surrounding the birth of their daughter turned hostile after they were rushed to the LA County USC Medical Center after the baby was born in June 27. What was supposed to be a home birth turned into an emergency home birth, and paramedics were called after Love experienced some complications. The baby was healthy, paramedics said, but the family was rushed to the hospital. According to the couple, after they declined doctors perform a blood draw on Fari, things turned hostile. We said no. We prefer our children to be seen by a private physician. Don't want your services. Reserve the right to deny. Kayla, the mother, said. Doctors asked Love if she had hepatitis, and an officer questioned whether Love cared about her daughter, asking why she didn't want to get the questions over with, and it just became a hot damn mess. There is a California law. According to California law, all babies born in the state must have the newborn screening test completed, which includes a blood draw. Love decided to be discharged early from the hospital and went home with her family. But that night, police and a social worker showed up at her door. Jones said, and I quote, between 10 to 15 officers came up to our home, pointing guns at me while I'm holding the baby over a health and wellness check, what they claim to be. Show this picture. They came with guns drawn. Now, here's what you learn if you're a police. Any cop will tell you, you draw your weapon only when you are ready to use it. You don't draw your weapon to scare anybody. You draw your weapon to kill something. So literally, 10 to 15 cops arrived in order to do this deed. What deed are we talking about? This is a newborn baby with responsible parents. They planned this. They got everything under control. They have a private physician. They knew their rights. They said, we'll take care of this with our private doctor. And God forbid you start looking at some of the insane medical records as it relates to black folk in emergency care. I get it. I understand it. But they came, guns blazing, guns drawn, for this new baby born, baby boy, excuse me, I think it was a young lady, and this insane chaos was simply uncalled for. Kenya, I know you got some thoughts about this as a black woman, especially.
Oh, just my heart goes out to that couple. I mean, we're seeing how many different avenues of being black in America does that tick off, whether it be the disparities that black women face within public health and the fact that our symptoms are less likely to believe we're 3 times more likely to die during childbirth. And to even afterward, the complications that come afterward, this family was protecting themselves from the very institutions that threatens their lives, whether it be in public health or whether it be at home. And we're seeing the consequence of that being further having their lives under threat when we see exactly what another issue is, and that's the escalation, that's the involvement of police issues or police law enforcement and issues of mental health and issues that are a matter of community health. And so that's why we're seeing people take to the streets all across last summer and including into this year. We're seeing folks who are saying enough is enough. When you're having a domestic dispute, if you're having a nonviolent domestic dispute, if you're having a mental health break, if you're having a health crises, you should not have your first interaction be with a guns ablaze of law enforcement. And so that's essentially what people of color have been protesting for all of this time. Essentially, you, from this very moment the child was born, has subjected them to the institutions that will make their lives harder as a black person and as a black woman in this country. And you traumatize a couple unnecessarily in order to do so, when simply if it's a matter of having to have the child have this particular kit within a certain amount of hours, give her that option of being able to see the primary care physician she wants or see the private doctor that would have been able to handle this. There are laws that allow these couples to do that anyway. We know that they have to have a certain amount of testing. Right. All babies do with countrywide. But what doesn't need to be the case is that you are forcibly entering their home or using 10 to 15 officers to confront them. For what? You endangered the baby more than the parents ever could have.
Yeah, and think about the adversarialness of these police officers who responded in this particular way. They're saying, we care about the child, so we're gonna go kill the parents. We care about the child, but while the father is holding the child, you got guns drawn. That could have ended in death for everybody. Well, I guess then the cops would have had the blood they were looking for.
This is exactly why people are saying that, this is why the protesters, this is why activists are saying police and law enforcement should not be the first responders to issues of community health. And they're right.
Well said. Sister, how can people follow you and check you out?
On everything, I'm live from Kenya.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Always a joy to have you on Indisputable.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we got the bullpen coming up. Stick and stay is Indisputable.
We're very honest that we're progressives. We call the Young Turks home of progressives, and we support progressive candidates.
There has been this reemergence of political activism, especially among young people.
This weekend was the second Women's March, both across the US and across the world. So these people are not simply marching, they're not simply talking, but they're also running for office. And when they do run, they're gonna make a difference.
Joe Crowley is congressman from New York. He's very powerful. Why? He raised a lot of money. But there's someone finally challenging him.
We need to have representation that advocates as fiercely for working class people as possible from this seat.
If candidates like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez even get a little bit of media attention outside of what the Young Turks does, they have an excellent chance of winning. She's gonna win. She's gonna win.
68% reporting.
The majority of Americans want Medicare for all. So I don't care what you and your corporate cronies want. What I care about is what the American people want.
We believe in total change. Everything runs on donor money. And that is what we will fight. And that is exactly why they don't like us.
We're having fun. It's election night.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has defeated Joe Crowley.
Here we go again.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Down goes Crowley. Down goes Crowley. Down goes Manafort. Down goes Cohen. Women came out in record numbers in the primaries. They said you'll be lucky to get one candidate. We now have 12 that have won their primaries. Bezos and Amazon announcing that they are going to go to a 15-hour minimum wage.
We're making progress. Let's keep going.
Many of these women made history.
The biggest victories, all women of color. Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, Sharice Davids and Deb Haaland.
And I want to go to Congress because I want to change those things.
I'm calling it. Jamal Bowman has won. Down goes Engel. Down goes Engel.
For a long time, we have not had progressives in power. It's going to be something to behold.
Welcome to Happy Hour, everybody. After a week of soul-crushing news, we break out the good stuff. Good news, good videos, good people, and of course, drink good alcohol. That's the worst thing I've ever had.
This is the best show.
Full disclosure, we did do a shot right before the show began. It says,
let's
flamingo.
Flamingo.
The reason you had trouble with that word is it's not a word.
Okay.
This is the one of everything.
I've got a rash. Could I just put it on that to see if it'll take it off?
What did you used to think this was?
Bull piss.
Drink it, swallow it,
No.
spit it. Oh, that's needed after a day like this. Cheers to Brett Ehrlich. Climax. Uranus smells like farts. Because of course it does. This is the worst sketch ever of a perp. But guess what, ladies and gentlemen? They found the guy. This is Sophie's super happy dog story of the week.
This dog is so precious and deserves the world. I'm just not drinking that beer.
Here's my dog. This is Onyx.
Yeah, I would just say that he's exotic because he's not your traditional dog. Still 12 out of 10 because they're all good.
Well, if that made you happy, just wait till you see the best thing ever of the week. There is a woman who moves like a horse.
Why do I want to go home and like try this?
We're actually going to show you the running butthole challenge right now. What's happening? No, that's just wrong. Every way. And we'll see you next time.
Hey Dave, as you can probably see, Skype froze. Frozen crash.
You know, I'm watching that documentary on the Vietnam War, and there was a TV journalist in the middle of some tiny little village in Vietnam doing live TV as the soldiers were burning the Vietnamese huts, and it didn't crash. And that was 1965, and he was in Vietnam.
All right, welcome back to Indisputable. I got a lot of viewer comments. I'm gonna read as many as I possibly can. All right, let's get it. TYT member Wizard, AKA Rusty Dragon. Were they going to use bullets to draw the blood? Were they going to use bullets to draw the blood? Question mark. YouTube super chat. I can't say that. I can't do it. I say the first part. Hung like, okay? That's all you're gonna get out of me. $14.99, thank you. Okay, appreciate the show. We appreciate you back. The name is funny too. Nicolette Horatis says, been fighting Portland police for over a year. They all need to be fired. There is no reform with them. Nicole Smith, isn't tampering with evidence a crime? The tampering was followed by false arrest and imprisonment, AKA kidnapping. Damn, that makes sense, doesn't it? That's what happens when you hold everybody to the same standard of accountability. Elizabeth D'Alio says, when you consider that a black woman is more likely to die in a maternity ward than a white woman, this story is extra horrible. Right. Kelly Williams, thank you so much. Direct tie 4. They'll leave with blood one way or another. Seems like it. Twitch. BFizza83. If you can't force people to get the damn vaccine, why the hell would the police need to be involved / enforce something based on the parents' right for their baby? Yeah. All right. Really great comments. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the bullpen. In the bullpen today, we have a highly successful trial lawyer based in Los Angeles, representing companies and individuals in matters ranging from routine business cases to some Hollywood and entertainment stuff. We got Kurt Schlichter on Indisputable. Kurt, good day.
Dr. Richie, thank you for having me. I appreciate you stepping up and asking somebody who will dispute, despite the title of the show.
Well,
And
listen, I'm looking
I think
forward
it takes
to
a
it.
lot of courage to have somebody on who doesn't agree with you, and I'm glad to be here.
Man, listen, I'm glad to have you on the show. So here's what I want to do. I don't want to presume what you believe about gun rights and the Second Amendment of the US Constitution. So if you would, give us some background as to your belief structure, your value system as it relates to gun ownership in America.
Well, it's very simple, Dr. Richie. The right to keep and bear arms is a natural right of all citizens. It has been it's been recognized for many centuries. The United States Constitution recognizes this pre-existing right. Each individual has a God-given right to possess the arms necessary to deter or, if necessary, defend themselves from crime or tyranny. And while the tyranny part has not really come into play in about 250 years, it doesn't mean it can't. It's very, very important. I aggressively believe that every American citizen should have taken upon themselves to go and possess effective weaponry so that they can protect themselves, their family, their community, and their constitution.
Okay, let me ask you this. You called it, I think, a natural right, correct?
Yes.
Well, statutorily, it's an aged-in right.
Well, it's not statutory, it's constitutional. But the Constitution doesn't create rights. The government doesn't give us anything. It recognizes rights that we have. We have the right to speak freely because that's how God made us. We have the right to defend ourselves because that's how God made us.
So, attorney, you're gonna get some pushback from me on that because statutorily, you understand what I mean when I say that states are able to set age prerequisites or qualifiers in order for you to engage in the constitutional right to bear arms. You have other rights that have statutory restrictions. So when you call it a natural right, one would presume that your definition of a natural right means that as soon as you were born, you inherit that right, which there are some rights you do inherit as soon as you're born without a statutory prerequisite or restriction. However, the right to bear arms, Attorney Kurt, is not a natural right. It is, in fact, a statutory restriction to that right for age qualifiers and also other qualifiers, such as if you are a felon, you lose that right. If you are a person who has been red flagged for mental health, in some jurisdictions, you lose that right. Don't you think that's common sense?
Well, I think it's manifestly so. I think that the rights of citizens, which include the right to vote, the right to own property, all of them relate to age. So when you reach the age of majority, which is 18, you should have all the rights of a citizen. Beneath that, no, you sometimes lose those. You don't have those rights. Doesn't mean you can be oppressed. Also, you can lose your rights through due process because you've committed a crime, you suffer from a debilitating mental condition, something like that. But the basic right, because this is one of the mistakes I see a lot, Dr. Ritchie, when we talk about rights. We don't focus on the right, we focus on the exceptions. You talk about First Amendment freedom of speech, and inevitably it comes down to, well, what about yelling fire in a crowded theater, which is a terrible example, but that's the one everybody uses. I believe that we should talk about the right itself. The right is the ability of a citizen to defend himself, his family, his community, and his constitution. And frankly, I think it's more than a right, I think it's a duty.
Okay, let me ask you this. You mentioned age of majority. What's the age of majority?
18.
Based on whose statutory requirement?
Well, it's in the Constitution for voting. It's essentially common law. There may be some states where certain rights are, take effect earlier. For instance,
that's incorrect. Just so you know, Attorney Kurt, age of majority is not in the U.S. Constitution. It is left to be defined. No, it is not. Right, you said the Constitution.
Well, except in the amendment that allows 18-year-olds to vote.
Now, so age of majority is a state statute. Some states still consider the age of majority to be 17, by the way. At one point, many states had it at 16, and back decades ago, they had it at 21. As a matter of fact, that was the legal prerequisite age in order to even vote in this democracy, until people said, how in the hell can I go to fight for a country that I can't even vote in the democracy for? So they reconciled that issue. So my point to you is that age of majority is not constitutionally defined. And I'm going somewhere with this, attorney.
Okay.
Age of majority is not defined by the Constitution. We say things like gun control, and I hate that terminology, when common sense legislation must govern how we utilize all of our rights. Common sense legislation governs all of our rights because rights come with responsibilities. So when you say things like age of majority, well, that's not constitutionally constructed. The framers of the Constitution did not say as soon as you're born, so it's not natural or innate in that sense. And they did not say when you turn 18. The states have been able to define and redefine statutorily what the age of majority means. You all accept that on face value without it being a constitutional prerequisite, without a constitutional mandate. But why do y'all get bent out of shape for other statutory elements that make common sense?
Well, first, your premise is off, because the Constitution was basically assumed the English common law, and the English common law understood that people do not take their full rights as citizens till they reach the age of majority. And I don't necessarily have an objection to lowering it. I do have an objection to raising it. And the fact is, the states do have some authority to give certain rights earlier and or later, for instance, age of consent.
Correct.
They don't have the right on voting. They do have the right on alcohol, but they don't use it because the feds hold back highway funds. Now, how does this relate? How is the fact that you can say, hey, wait a minute, we don't give 7-year-olds rifles? That's very different from saying I'm not going to give a 25-year-old a rifle. Look, I'm a former battalion commander and acting brigade commander with 2 deployments, 27 years as a colonel, been a lawyer for 25 years. And yet the state of California says I am not qualified to decide when to carry the same weapon I carried in the service of our country concealed. Now, I can do that in most other states. That is outrageous. We need to focus on the basic right and the parameters of the basic right rather than restricting it. Every American should have the right to keep weapons, keep arms as those are defined. And I think the Heller decision does a very good job of defining what arms are.
Yeah, but they do. You do have the constitutional right to bear arms.
Well, it wouldn't be, but if you're in, for instance, New York, I can't bear arms. I can't walk down the street with a Beretta 9mm like I carried overseas. I can't do it. It's not legal there. It is in Texas, for instance. It is in the states where I have a gun permit.
And let's do that. Let's do that. And once again, we're back to some statutory limitations to that right. But let's go to Texas, because Texas, they did something really interesting. They said, we're gonna engage in constitutional carry.
Yep.
And constitutional carry says that basically what you're saying on my show, once you reach age of majority, you have a constitutional right to carry the firearm or a firearm, or you have the right to bear arms. Now, that's interesting. Now remember, this means you do not need a permit.
Yes.
You do not need a license.
True.
You do not need these qualifiers in order to exercise this, as you would call it, natural right.
Absolutely.
Do you agree with the Texas style of constitutional carry?
Oh, I think that's in conformance with the Constitution. I think that's how it should be. Okay. But I do not think that people shouldn't be responsible for their actions. If you commit a crime while armed, if you are negligent while armed, just as if you do it while driving, you need to pay attend to the consequences. Now, I probably oversaw 20,000 soldiers training on weapons in my career. I was an officer, so I was kind of in the background. I wasn't up front, but there is nobody on earth who is more insistent on weapon safety than a Second Amendment advocate. And because you can get hurt, guns are dangerous things. That's why they're necessary. You can't misuse them.
Yeah, let me ask you that. We agree. We agree on that. If you misuse, if you abuse, if you engage in criminality, you bear the responsibility. Now, you believe in constitutional carry, which is basically the elimination of any other qualifier, such as a license or permit, in order to engage in a right that the Constitution gave you. Now, let me ask you this follow-up question. Do you believe voting is a right?
Of course, for an American citizen who hasn't lost it because of conviction for a felony in a jurisdiction that chooses to do that.
Gotcha. So if voting is a right, why don't you believe in constitutional voting?
I do.
Let me help you understand what I mean. Do you think that in order to exercise your right to vote, you need an ID?
Yes.
Do you think in order to exercise your right to carry on?
You can.
No.
The state can impose a statute to do that. It's constitutional to have an ID.
Yeah,
I think it's a good policy.
You just stepped in it, Kurt. Either you believe in the purism of the Constitution that says you have the right to bear arms without a prerequisite, a pre-qualifier, because the Constitution gave you that right. If you believe that right should be exercised by every citizen in the United States under the ideology of constitutional carry, why do you not believe in the same construct for constitutional voting?
Because people cheat. People cheat voting. People get convicted all the time.
People commit murder.
Election fraud. No,
people commit murder.
I know where you're going, and I think it's an interesting argument. But having an ID is not a barrier to voting. I have yet to meet a single person who said I can't get an ID.
Getting a permit for a gun is not a barrier to exercising.
No, a permit is permission. A permit is permission. It is me. I have to ask permission of the state of California to exercise my right. I don't have to ask to vote. You don't think, Attorney
Kurt, you don't think having an ID, having a registration process that can eliminate you from the voting ranks, having that kind of system is not also de facto permission in order to participate in democracy and exercise your constitutional right? Make the argument.
It's not even close. Exercising, look, the state has a right to clean up voter rolls and make sure that people who are
the state has a right to regulate who has a gun and who does not. The state has a right to regulate who has a gun and who does not. The state has a right to regulate the age of majority.
I think I used the wrong word. It is not right. It is the power, because all power is granted to the government. It doesn't. Government has no rights. It has the ability, it has a power, we grant it through the Constitution and through our elected representatives. It is not a misuse of government power to clean up voter rolls or to ensure that, John Smith is voting and John Smith is John Smith.
Right, is it a misuse of government authority to create common sense legislation around gun reform policy in their state?
I don't know, what's common sense gun policy?
Well, at least I got you halfway there to be open to the conversation.
I'm curious about it. Look, let
me read something. I'll read something to you.
There are some traditional common law limitations on the exercise of the right, and I think it's a mistake to focus on them rather than the right itself. But when somebody says common sense, well, what's common sense? Are you going to tell me what weapon I can and can't have? I think I'm a little
I think that's part of it.
Folks.
Your right to bear arms should not be your right to bear bazooka, in my opinion. But let me read some of the things that are.
Bazooka's not an arms under Heller.
Yeah, but let me read. Well, hell, under Heller, a knife is an arm. What are you talking about?
A knife is an arm.
Yeah,
you should be able to carry a knife if you want.
All right, so Attorney Kurt, I only got a few minutes left, brother. Let me go to some of the common sense reforms I think we should be able to agree on based on the sentiment of the common American.
Well, let's see.
96% of Americans support universal background checks for all gun purposes and purchases. Are you okay with that?
No, I don't believe in universal background checks.
Okay.
If I want to go get one, if I want to go buy a gun for my brother, I shouldn't have to prove my that somehow I'm not a criminal.
I got you. You're in the minority with that, and you don't have to prove you're not a criminal. You can actually be a criminal and get a gun. There are just certain offenses
they do all the time.
Commit. That's correct. Now, 77% want families to be able to request a red flag intervention. Now, these are families that have been verified as being victims of a particular individual, and they will have the authority through that prosecutor to request a red flag on that person temporarily. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I think there needs to be a way for people who are clearly mentally ill to be helped, and one of the ways you help them is keep them away from weapons.
Okay.
How that's done, I think you and I will agree that that has to be done both with attention to due process, compassion, and insight. If it's some sort of smoke screen designed to disarm people, I'm against it. If it is somebody who is a viable threat, who has a chance to answer, because remember, you devastate a career if you take somebody's firearms. If you're in the military and you have an order against you holding firearms, your career is gone. What if somebody's lying about you? What if the facts are wrong? What if the whole story's not told? I want to hear the whole story, but I don't think it's unreasonable. In theory, it's practice I'm worried about, that we can use due process to take weapons away. We take weapons away from prisoners.
Yeah,
no one disagrees with that.
All right, 70% of Americans want the police to be able to request a red flag intervention. What's your thoughts on that?
The police work for us. I have grave doubts about that. I don't think the police. I don't think the government should go around telling people who can and can't have weapons. I think if
it's a temporary red flag, temporary.
Yeah, well, I think that's a problem. In fact, they do disarm people by taking them into custody. If they have done something that has them being taken into custody, I don't mind them being disarmed.
Let me tell you where you and I probably more so fundamentally disagree. When you talk about dynamics in our law, like constitutional carry, you all focus so much on this Second Amendment dynamic that you do not think about the other rights and how every right comes with a level of responsibility, thus a level of regulation. It's the gun rights that you all want to see have no regulation. There's a guy, I just reported on him today. This guy had over 50 weapons, some legal, some illegal. He had 15,000 rounds of ammunition. He had 5 pipe bombs. And if there was a registry, which I know you're against, if there was a registry, they would have caught this guy years ago. But the only reason this guy got caught is because somebody tipped off the local sheriff. And if it had not been for that one tip, people would be dead today. But that's not a silo. That's not a silo. That happens across this country every single week. And we have militia groups that are being organized that are truly white supremacy organizations hell bent on disrupting democracy and disrupting the American government. You don't think we need this?
I think the existence of bigoted morons who want to hurt my family, which is not the same ethnicity I am, I think that's a great argument for ensuring that I have the kind of weaponry that I decide I need to protect my family,
what's interesting?
My constitution, and my country.
You know what's interesting about your argument? We have more ammunition than in the history of this country. We have more guns being owned by people than in the history of this country. And we still have more people dying. We still have more people being shot and killed than in the history of this country. Now, think about this, attorney. If it worked, if the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is having a good guy with a gun, well, obviously it ain't working because you got more guns than ever. You got more guys with guns than ever. You have more ammunition than in the history of this country, all in the hands of American citizens than ever before. You got all of these dynamics, and you still have more people being killed by gun death than ever before.
Well, Dr. Ritchie, you're talking about guns being the first line of defense. They're not. The first line of defense is solid families training up their kids so they don't go down that path.
Gotcha.
The second line of defense is the police arresting career criminals who cause an outsized proportion of this stuff. I mean, most of the murders are gang related. They are people who've committed crimes before.
That's completely untrue.
Look,
most murders are not that, sir. I won't let you do that on this show. Kurt, I won't let you do that on this show. Most murders in America are not gang related. Most murders, they are not gang related, sir.
Are criminal related.
Well, they're definitely criminal related. Damn it, we know that.
Like robberies, whatever, but they also involve gangs.
All right, I'm out of time, man. It was fun. Thank you, Kurt, for being on the show. All right, hope you come back.
I like working at a high level and answering tough questions. Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me and being respectful. I hope I had done the same.
Absolutely. Thank you, attorney. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, please remember, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and take care of this planet. And the truth is always indisputable.